Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece, Luffy's Mother is Who? By Rose 7 and 101. Marineford never happened. Big Mom learned something about Luffy that rocks the world to its foundations. Alliances are formed and tested, while the seas are thrown into turmoil as Luffy's allies rush to save him before it is too late. Adios.
It was another beautiful and delicious day on Whole Cake Island, capital of Charlotte Linlin's empire. Charlotte Linlin, who was feared the world over as Big Mom. Reclining on her throne, Big Mom reflected upon the recent changes to the new world over the last 2 years. They were 2 fabulous years for her stomach. Her territory had grown, as had her sweet supplies and its varieties. It was always a delight to taste new and surprising candies and cakes. She had agreed to stole mama, the leftovers from the old man Whitebeard mainly because of the candy. And pissing on an injured old man when he was down was a pleasure, especially when she rubbed it in the red hair brat's face. She got there first, in your face, little brat. It was almost 2 years ago when her spies sent words that the Marines, led by the 3 admirals Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji, with hundreds of battleships ambushed the main flagship of Whitebeard. She had every one of her allies and crew be ready to set sail immediately to any of the old man's territories near them. She should have known that Kaido would not stay put and wait like a good doggy. He attacked the old man with his whole fleets of allies. The fact that Rat called Blackbeard and his band of mischief was with the beast left no doubt in her mind that he knew about the ambush beforehand. Only Kaido would work with unsavory people like that. Traitors were always traitors. It was a known secret that the dog of the government Doflamingo had another leash on him, made from unbreakable steel. Whitebeard was not known as the strongest man in the world for nothing, and the Marines were stupid if they thought isolating him with half his crew and no allies would make him any easier to take down. Even on her deathbed, she would never admit to it, but Whitebeard at least after Roger's death did rule the seas besides the empty throne Roger left in his wake. Some say he still does, she disagrees. She could never fathom why Whitebeard didn't use all his power and cunning to reach Raftel and take the crown by force. It wasn't because he couldn't, but because for whatever reason he didn't want to, and that made him the most dangerous person in the world, in her eyes. Without his allies to worry about, Whitebeard unleashed his fruit powers to its full extent. It was bloody. The reports coming from the area afterwards were telling of waterfalls falling out of the sky, their flow changing between ice and lava randomly, whole areas of undiscovered land that were once open water, of storms standing still, red seas as blood roamed the sky like clouds, and even crazier weather than even the New World was used to. Some of her ministers warned that they may feel the changes of the weather pattern here in her own land. Damn you, old man. The world government needed to announce the whole area was now quarantined off as too dangerous for human life, beyond the already naturally unnatural weather and hazards found throughout the New World. A moronic and short-sighted attempt to try and claim they actually had the power to provide security and control over that region. It would take several fleets to patrol such a vast areas, to quell the panic and fear of the sheep. It had been both amusing and educational to read some of those hysterical news articles after the event. The tremor fruit is said to have the power to destroy the world. Now everyone wanted to enter the forbidden war zone, hoping to see an illustration of how the world would look if Whitebeard decided to hell with you all. The fight lasted 2 days, then the old man's allies arrived and even the brat Red Hair got involved and had a row with Kaido. The Marines tried to play the whole thing down, but the story spread like wildfire. The fact that the best and brightest of the Marines and another Yonko and traitor banded together and still couldn't take him down, made his legend soar even more. Whitebeard was the ultimate winner. She had to admit, it made her hesitate for a few seconds, if she should or shouldn't make the Fishman Island hers. But she was a Yonko, and she would never let such a golden chance go by. By the time the war had ended, her allies and her sons had reached an understanding with the Fishman King. Neptune had wholeheartedly agreed. He was beyond grateful that the Fishman Island had become her turf. Whitebeard had survived, of course. He wouldn't be the winner if he hadn't. Very unfortunate. It would have made things so much easier if he had died, except even he had been grievously injured in the process. The reports about how much varied. For anyone else that elderly, and with those kinds of wounds, they would be cold stone dead. As it was, rumor had it that he was slowly healing up, while intensifying the training of his division commanders. This didn't bode well for the Marines, Kaido, and maybe even her. It meant that Whitebeard was being cautious with his next step. When a man that strong chose to take his time and prepare, especially with all the resources and powerhouses at his disposal. Regardless, no one felt testing him anytime soon. She knew when the old man fully recovered, she would have a fight on her hands, so she intended to enjoy every bit of the candy while she still could. And yes, the reason he had not tried anything yet was probably because she largely left the inhabitants alone. She was a Yonko and she almost always kept her promises, especially when candy was involved. They delivered her the promised candies in the promised quantities, and at the promised time, she left them alone. After all, they needed every working hand and each second to prepare the next promised delivery. In fact, she was confident that Jinbei and his crew, despite officially joining her crew, were giving the man reports, and were smuggling back wealth to cover all the costs of creating the candy for Neptune and Fishman Island. Whitebeard was sentimental like that, acting as if he were still taking responsibility for the inhabitants in her turf. She could care less. If Whitebeard was intending to use his wealth to keep her stomach happy, she had no objection whatsoever. Of course, when the time came and Jinbei showed his true colors, she would take care of him as fitting with his crime. She hadn't used her lovely roulette in a while. In fact, speaking of her beautiful little toy, Napoleon had passed on to her some reports from her spies on Fishman Island. She was appreciative of their sweets, not stupid. That Jinbei might be planning to leave her crew for some unfathomable reason. Whitebeard was the obvious suspect, which was worrisome since it meant the old man was on the move. Yet it seemed too preemptive without her rival first proving his strength against a more tougher and strategic target. Bah! It did not matter, only that Jinbei suffered appropriately. Which of course led her to reflect upon that incident with that snot-nosed rookie who had claimed to have eaten all of this month's candy. A member of the worst generation, Monkey D. Luffy. The bringers of the new pirate era as they like to describe themselves, they dare infer that her era ended. Huh? Naive. Were trash that dared to come floating her way, looking for any cranny and nook while trying to sneak in. They dared to try to invade her paradise, tainting and soiling it with their greedy, filthy, grabby hands. Even worse because of them, she needed to waste money on stupid things like fixing and buying new ships, instead of securing more candies or at least more ingredients for her delicious cakes. Unfortunately, the price to pay because of those annoying rookies was still steep. Snack, who had once been one of her favorite sons, one of the former 4 sweet commanders, holding the highest authority, respect, and fighting prowess amongst the crew after her, was defeated by that mad monk. She had raged upon hearing this. Some new hatchling defeated one of her best. That was unforgivable. Cracker, another commander, took care of the problem, or at least he should have done. After the storm of Fu subsided, they looked and couldn't find his corpse. Mama had several ideas to what to do with it, better yet if he was still alive to enjoy it. But alas, they didn't find a corpse, and new news held that he may be alive. This ass had brought the greatest shame on her crew, and he may be alive laughing at her. She shouldn't have let her sons and daughters handle this. She should have done it herself, should have killed all those small ants, and made an example out of them. That imp boy kid, his name and look, with no sense of style, had the audacity to attack and destroy 2 of her allies' ship. But the one that infuriated her the most was the brat Straw Hat. He was a damn bloody another one. It took years to get rid of the last one, the blasted Roger. He stole what was rightfully hers. Damn them all to the 7 hells. She had really been looking forward to the 10 tons of sweets this month from the Fishman Island to help her brighten her mood. She was planning a huge tea party, and deciding on who to invite and share the delights with her. And to make matters worse, he had the nerve to challenge her. She admired ballsy people, assuming they were not an inflated balloon full of words, but could back it up. Then she could have some real fun while she crushed them. And to lie to her that he ate all of her candy. She didn't care who was to blame for her missing candy, only that there was someone to blame, and to declare that he would defeat her in the new world and claim Fishman Island as his own territory. She wondered if the brat knew he would have to fight the old man too, It didn't matter, she would crush them all. She was meaning to wait until he came to her territory, and then destroy him bit by bit, like she was doing to the layered cake in front of her. To devour him layer by layer, to see his broken spirit laying by her feet. But the insufferable brat teamed up with another one of the worst generation, a warlord, surgeon of death, Trafalgar Law, and they had the gall to kidnap her prized scientist Caesar, who was the key to finding the secret of gigantification. Caesar had promised he had the results ready. She was this close for her perfect utopia, her dream since she was 5, her promise to Mother Carmel. But once again the D-brat had to foil her plans. Still, Linlin had not become an emperor on her power alone. She knew how to gather information and plan accordingly. Baron Tamago, her most powerful and trusted combatant who was not of her own flesh and blood, had been ordered to gather whatever information he could about Straw Hat, and soon she would know precisely how to hurt him. Straw Hat needed only to be able to use his mouth, so she could hear his lovely voice screaming. She had sent her other son Cracker to finish the job he fumbled before, to bring her that ballsy monk, so she can cut his balls off for him. If he was already dead, oh well, she would cut them anyway. Cracker wouldn't fail either. On the off chance he failed to do so, he better bring himself in a box of crackers and jam. He would at least be useful as snack. But that wasn't enough, she was being looked down on. The laughing stock of the Yonko. It took the Marines in all of their glory, Kaido and the turncoat Teach, to take down Old Man Whitebeard, and it still ended with him having the upper hand and alive. And here she was having trouble taking care of Small Fry. She was the one that those new insignificant small flies dared attack. She needed to make an example out of them, something memorable. After she finished, they would cower just by the mere whisper of her name. And that gusty Straw Hat was the one she chose. He would make a beautiful bedtime story about a young ambitious man sailing the sea, making a name for himself until he challenged the sea and wind and didn't listen to Mama's advice and ate more than he could swallow, and so no trace of him was ever found. His name was forgotten 'cause none alive can remember him. And what is the morale of this story, my darling little children? Don't piss your mama off, always obey her and love her. She would not only annihilate him and his tiny pack of crew and allies, including Jinbei if necessary, but also everything he held dear. His name would only be found on old faded bounty posters. Big Mom swallowed the bit of cake, enjoying the taste as much as the vision her mind was drawing. Then Tamago ran into her audience chamber without even being announced. Only his years of dedicated service kept Big Mom from crippling him. Well, more than he was already crippled. Mama, he gasped. Sorry Mama, sorry, Swar. But I had to tell you as soon as I could, the boy's father, it's Monkey D. Dragon, of the Revolutionary Army Bond. The Emperor froze. Oh, flashback, I see, leered Big Mom as she looked down at the insect before her. Albeit, a stronger insect than usual, with a unique bloodline. Very well, I will give you those supplies you so desperately need, in exchange for something else. Yes, was the gravely reply. You're strong, so, I want a child? What? Oh, that's all that's needed, the hooded man asked as he looked at Tamago. Yes, the long leg nodded. You just fill up this tube, and we'll handle the rest. Big Mom doesn't like to be distracted from eating. I see. Tamago could have sworn he heard the new husband mutter something about, I knew the old man was messing with me, how babies were made. -00 to 0. Big Mom grinned down at the screaming baby boy. Well now, how will you help your dear mama? Then she glanced down at Katakuri, her strongest, most dependable child, who had just entered her room. Was there any trouble? No, Mama, he calmly answered. The father did not understand why his presence was unnecessary. He left without much issue, however. Expression growing more malicious, Big Mom sneered. Good. She laid the baby into his cradle, while a wet nurse brought up a bottle. Mama did not provide the milk herself, too tiring, to feed the little guy. Suddenly the window shattered open, and even Katakuri was caught off guard. In a burst of wind, the nurse was knocked to the ground, and Big Mom could only whirl around to stare at the man framed by the stormy night sky. In his arms was her baby. Thunder lit up the night sky, framing the tribal tattoos that ran down half his face. Then he was gone. Oh, present, how sure is your source, hissed Linlin. The cup in her hand had already become dust. Tamago was no fool, yet it was best to be sure. That secretary for Vice Admiral Onigumo, who thinks he's funneling information to Cipher Pole, was the prompt answer. That source had been reliable in the past. He overheard Vice Admiral Garp arguing with former Fleet Admiral and Acting Inspector Sengoku about it while delivering some files. "My baby boy," Big Mom whispered, "and a 400 million bounty all on his own." And he dared to challenge her, her sweet summer child. Her blood was strong in her little boy. Her smile was terrifying to behold. "Summon Katakuri, he has a wayward brother to recover." Maybe he really had eaten all of that candy. Such a sweet tooth, like it should be. Big Mom relaxed, a terrifying smile adorning her face. She let out a long laugh, unable to contain her merry mood inside. "Ha ha ha mama, she had a party to prepare." Panting for breath, Sanji regarded the beaten and burnt form of Jesus Burgess, and only then noticed that Doflamingo's lethal birdcage over Dressrosa had finally fallen. Luffy had won. No surprise there, even if it had taken him long enough. The only surviving member of the Blackbeard Pirates after the war with Whitebeard had come to Dressrosa to prove himself in the tournament. That was fair, except for the part where the idiot had thought it a good idea to target Luffy. Originally, Sanji, Nami, Brook, Chopper, and Momonosuke had been forced to escape from Dressrosa when Doflamingo had come after them, using the Thousand Sunnies coup de burst to get away. However, without any other threats, they had promptly turned around to return to where their friends were fighting for their lives, barely touching dry ground before the birdcage had come down, trapping them within the Mad Warlord's death game. While the others protected the bratty pervert, who was still strangely a priority target for the Doflamingo family, Sanji had gone to help fight the major players directly. He could hardly trust Mosshead to go the right direction after all. In fact, he bet that the only reason he had found the obscenely tall stone giant with the squeaky voice, Sanji had several theories about using size to compensate for other things, almost all of them because one specific crewmate of his with an obsession with swords. But this was utterly ridiculous, was because he was too big to miss. Furthermore, no doubt the reason the show-off had managed to take him down was because the enemy was a lot weaker than he looked. There had been some delays stopping people who were being controlled by Doflamingo, escaping an admiral who seemed strangely reluctant to press the issue, and taking down the small fry. From what he had overheard, Chopper had taken over the local hospitals and directed the evacuation of all the patients from the birdcage. Then Sanji had run into Burgess trying to kill a badly wounded Luffy as a bunch of gladiators tried to get him to safety. Well, there was only one proper response to that. Still, it had been a tough fight. In fact, Sanji suspected that if Blackbeard had survived, the supposedly wily traitor would have ensured that Burgess was even stronger than he had proven to be. As it was, his observation haki was weak enough to give Sanji, who specialized in that discipline and matched him in armament, the edge he needed. Which was just as well, since none of the Straw Hats would tolerate losing, never again. They had failed Luffy at Sabaody when they fell to Kuma, scattered across the globe, forcing Luffy to fight in the most massive war ever without his crew, his Nakama, at his back. It had all worked out in the end, and everyone had received excellent training from where Kuma had sent them, yet that was no excuse. None. They would never fail Luffy again. Sanji was so deep in his pondering that he almost missed the sneaky attack directed at his back. Using his haki for observing and attacking, he dodged the first strike. The second. Not the third. Tears poured like a waterfall down Princess Rebecca's face, as she looked down on her nation's savior. Remembering his vow. "Rebecca, don't cry yet, I won't let any more of the troops die, and I'll make sure to keep you safe, on my life as the future Pirate King, I swear, I'm gonna send Flamingo flying." And he had. The final battle between the free pirate and the despotic madman had split open the ground itself, yet it was finally over. Somehow, they had won. She saw it happen, wishing and praying, mesmerized by the intensity of it all, yet she could hardly believe that what was finally over. After years and years of dreaming, hoping, pleading, fighting. They were finally free. Driven past the point of exhaustion, the man Rebecca would always refer to be the alias she had met him under, Lucy, had fallen unconscious. Thankfully his ally, Trafalgar Law and ex-warlord, had used his powers to bring Lucy here, whose head was currently resting on her folded knees. "Lucy," she sobbed out in joy, her tears raining down on his face. Then they all stiffened as a stranger spoke up. "I must admit, I'm impressed. For someone so young to win. I'm glad I stayed out of it so he could prove himself." Whirling around, they beheld the sight an extremely tall and muscular man with short spiky crimson hair. He wore a torn leather jacket, and a ragged yet massive light scarf over his mouth, over which sharp, intense eyes regarded Straw Hat with interest. Over his shoulder he held the motionless and bloody form of Sanji. "Charlotte Katakuri, what is your purpose here?" gritted out Law, his eyes hard. Despite his shaky arms, one only reattached minutes ago, he stood proud, his hands clutching his sword. "Well done," Katakuri addressed the unresponsive form of Lucy. Despite her own speed, Rebecca almost missed how the newcomer's arm stretched out to grab Lucy and reel him in. Without another word, they were gone. "No," screeched Rebecca in horror. -00 The sudden movement by the old, blind admiral which frankly only highlighted how dangerous he had to be. Seriously, Shanks was a one-armed middle-aged man and people were terrified of him. So you just knew this guy in purple was not just bad news. Instantly put Zoro on alert with two swords half drawn. "There's a newcomer," Admiral Fujitora quietly said. "We didn't notice because he was keeping quiet, but now he's a movin', and he's a tough one." Reaching out with his own haki, Zoro quickly found the presence of the monster who was making his way to Dressrosa's shore at an impressive speed, and with a snarl of rage, Zoro tore off in pursuit, both the bloodthirsty Sandai Kitetsu and reliable Shisui in his hands. For all that he knew he could not make it in time, that he was not fast enough, he could not stop. His word and swords were dull and useless if he was so weak as to not do all that was within his power to save his precious captain. And yes, the idiot cook too. A few minutes later, he found he was right. He was too late. The ship with the Jolly Roger of the Big Mom pirates had sailed beyond the reach of even his farthest attack. Leaving with the idiot cook and the man who had given Zoro and the rest of the crew closure, purpose, a dream, a home, and most importantly, Nakama. "Someone's going to pay for this," he vowed, even as his swords shook in his hands, "and as the swordsman of the Straw Hat Pirates, I will execute that toll." -00 It was a battle of wills as two of the most powerful men in the world government, and indeed the world itself, all but screamed at each other. "Because of your bloody antics, the very face of justice itself has been dragged through the mud," raged Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. "Yet if dirty's that easily, why don't you just keep that face hidden in your nightie?" shot back Admiral Fujitora, unrepentant for his prostration before King Riku and people of Dressrosa. Oh, and for crediting Straw Hat, Luffy and Surgeon of Death, Law for stopping the madness of Doflamingo. If our credibility has been so compromised by the admission of a single mistake, it never existed in the first place. The Marines, standing as far away as possible yet close enough not to leave their admiral, tried hard not to listen. None of them wanted to face the furious Fleet Admiral. To say they would rather be on cleaning duty for a year than be here was an understatement. Yet some were deeply surprised by the passion emitting from Admiral Fujitora. The large man was usually mistaken by many as being a passive individual. It was easy to forget that the blind Marine had been appointed as one of three pillars of the Marines. Both men stopped to catch their breath, still too in control to let themselves say something they could not take back. Fujitora could not do his duty, his true duty, to the people he was meant to protect if he was kicked out of Navy. And probably hunted down afterwards. At the same time, Sakazuki dared not find himself in a position wher new admiral so soon. After all, it would only dirty his face more. This mess is on you to clean up," Fujitora, Akainu calmly said. Then he yelled once more, "Until you bring me the heads of both Straw Hat and Law, I will see to it that the doors of every single Marine base on this earth remain closed to you." "Well, about that," Fujitora calmly said, "there's been a complication." "Well?" repeated Sakazuki, although he too had settled down. He recognized that this sudden shift meant Fujitora was legitimately concerned about something, and the blind man was not given to either hysterics or dramatics. Right after defeat in Doflamingo, it appears that Straw Hat was abducted by persons unknown. His crew, Law, and the rest of the pirates left shortly after in pursuit. However, the hockey of the kidnapper was immense. Far greater than I would expect for a man merely interested in Straw Hat's bounty. I believe that they have a greater agenda for Straw Hat. Given how we're in the dark, and that his crew is off to try and rescue him, I believe we should keep quiet about this. Pride's all well and good, but we don't want to commit ourselves to anything hasty until we have a better understanding of the situation. This will be considered, grunted Akainu. And I still expect you to bring them in. That someone else kills them will be no excuse. Then he hung up. -00 to 0 somewhere in East Blue. You read about what the Straw Hat Kid did? A man with newspaper open in front of him asked to the quiet bar. It was still early in the day, and except for the bartender, there were only 3 other occupants. Who? Murmured one of the occupants unto his cup, named Rick. No. Not RRRR Rick. He was nursing headache from last night, but it didn't stop him from gulping down his drink. It is the rookie from here, right? His name was Duffy or something, the bartender answered. Straw Hat Luffy, the man with newspaper corrected with amusement. His name was Vin and he was a tall man with slim build, big glasses taking most of his face, with the other half consisting of a well-trimmed mustache. The supernova that fought alongside Whitebeard in the War of the Best. 2 years ago, the third man remarked. Aaron, he was busy trying to fix a table that was the casualty of yesterday's party. That was true? I thought it was a rumor, exclaimed the bartender with raised eyebrow. It is, isn't? Think about it. Any trace of the Straw Hat Kid disappeared after the war. We used to hear about him almost every other week and then after the war he disappeared. Jill even had a betting pool going on if he was alive or not. How much it get to? Aaron asked, using the legs table in his hand to make his point. 10 million belly, 5 to 1 against. If I am not mistaken and even you thought he was dead, added the bartender, pointing with the cup in his hand at Rick. Okay, fine. Damn it. Jill will be after my ass for those 200 belly, so, what you are saying that he was hidden with Whitebeard for 2 years? Why? What was he doing? Rick said, his voice and face showing his skepticism. Being trained maybe, bartender said hesitantly. You think? Snorted Rick unbelieving. It could be. Maybe he joined the Yonko. A lot of new pirates do, the man with newspaper said. Yeah, wasn't. What his name? The ex-marine. Drake, he joined Kaido, and the other one, Apu something from the worst generation joined him too. So it could be that Luffy Brad also joined a Yonko, explained the bartender. That might explain why Law's risking his warlord title if he thinks it'll give him an in with Whitebeard, mused Vin, looking more closely at the newspaper in his hands. Yep. So the alliance between this new warlord and the Straw Hat Kid is really true? Grunted Vin his agreement. He was immersed in the article and not in the conversation. It seems a bit far-fetched that a brand new warlord would throw that away to work with a rookie, even if he is the best of the worst generation. The bartender trailed off, looking a little unsure. Yeah, those S won't change their colors until there is something better for them. Maybe like you said, an alliance with Whitebeard, Rick said reluctantly agreeing to the point that strongest man in the world was better proposition than the Marines. It wasn't even choice, really. Why are you bringing him up anyway? Asked an intrigued Aaron, sensing something was up from the rapid changing look on Vin's face. Vin looked up at them, and with wide smile gestured at the newspaper in his hand. Look, he and this law took out Doflamingo, seriously. You sure? A government dog against another government dog, whistled the bartender. They are all pirates, the same S, spitted Rick, ignoring the face the bartender was giving him. Still, Doflamingo is supposedly one of the strongest of them, Aaron remarked with some awe coloring his voice. Not anymore, sing-songed Vin. Then he held up a newspaper with a touch of reverence. Look here, there's even a picture of Doflamingo in chains. The man showed them newspaper in some reverence. Gasps and whistles filled the room as everyone moved closer to look at the small picture. Wow, now, I can believe that Whitebeard trained him. Yeah, he would need to be strong, like really strong to take this monster out. Well, you did say another warlord helped. The man nodded, shrugging. Another warlord being involved in Doflamingo's defeat didn't matter to them. What mattered was that it involved someone from East Blue. Their humble home did something exciting for once. That they were putting the whole East Blue on the world map. If that is true, oh shit, exclaimed Aaron suddenly, with the table's leg still in his hand. He almost knocked out the one standing beside him. What? Don't you see? If Straw Hat was trained by Whitebeard's and is making his move now, doesn't that mean that Whitebeard is going to make his move soon? It's been 2 years since we've heard anything from him. And I bet Straw Hat's his opening move. Testing the waters while removing 2 warlords from the board at once. That sounds exciting. Another war. A war is exciting to you, you moron. A shrug of indifference was the bartender answer. We're in East Blue, the most boring place ever. What happened in the other side of the world doesn't affect us. We usually get the stories weeks later. Privately, it also means I'll be getting more customers coming in to discuss this sort of stuff. Yeah, but this is the strongest man in the world, the pirate that took on the 3 admirals and another Yonko at once, and emerged as the victor. His power could destroy the world, they say. Vin trailed off. His minion just took out one of the strongest warlords, and got another one as his ally, echoed in everyone's mind. The balance between the 3 great powers had just taken a drastic shift. The 4 men shared a look of wariness and that swiftly shifted to unnerved panic. The 4 of them looked at the picture of smiling Straw Hat, beside the picture of another man with strange fluffy hat, the allied warlord Law maybe, and of the shackled Doflamingo, staring right back them, and all they could do is gulp. And pray. Oh, the cheeky brat had gone and done it, gurarararrar, laughed Whitebeard merrily. I am going to find my crew and will not be looking for trouble, muttered Ace with half-hearted mockery. Despite his best efforts, he really was failing to look disapproving, what with the big smile on his face, broadcasting how proud he was. While Luffy had spent most of his time training with Rayleigh, Ace had come visit a few times to help his idiot little brother's growth. It had also been an opportune time to take a few pictures to, accidentally, let others see. Such as during Ace's weekly boasting sessions on whatever island he was at, tricking people into thinking Luffy was safe in the New World, and spreading the word that Whitea a 400 million belly bounty benefited everybody. Ace knew Luffy would be upset about this. Ace had asked him bluntly about an alliance, and Luffy's immediate answer was a flat no, accompanied with heated glare. And indeed had never agreed to it. But what his dear little brother didn't know didn't hurt him. You did say that trouble finds him, Yoi, remarked an amused Marco, reading the article for the second time from behind Ace's shoulders. Ace snorted, muttering about trouble magnets and his sanity, and too soon. It wasn't even 2 weeks since the Fishman fiasco. Ace, my son, you are not one to speak, Whitebeard admonished him with twinkling eyes. Pops, Ace whined, with laughing eyes and still grinning ear to ear. But this does change things, Yoi, remarked Marco. Then he sighed and added, again. Indeed, agreed Whitebeard, looking thoughtful and amused at the same time. Your brother just made things much more interesting, he said with approval. Again, Marco murmured under his breath. He does that, Ace nodded energetically. We wanted to take out any resources and allies to Kaido slowly and methodically, and your brother just took out the biggest fish. That will make destroying him easier, Yoi. Whitebeard hummed, lost in thought. So he will be the first one we go after, not the Marines? Ace wondered aloud. He will be distracted now, so it will be the best to take him while he is weak, Yoi. But, trailed off Marco. We will lose our trump card, rumbled Whitebeard and sighed. I prefer not to do several simultaneously attacks, yet now that may be the best course of action. The other two stayed silent, considering the consequences for each scenario. For the last 2 years they were planning their payback, while strengthening their crew and their allies. The first thing Whitebeard had done was widen and spread their intelligence network. Gathering data and information on every possible person involved, from his or her habits, to those around them, and every factor potentially affecting the power balance. They had been looking at every possible outcome to every move they could make, either secretly or publicly. They had several plans to every situation imaginable. They had run through endless hypothetical scenarios. They'd been cautious and careful with every rumor or fact they spread to mislead others. Now, none of that mattered. Because of Luffy. Ace's little troublesome brother, the cheeky brat. Marco shouldn't be surprised. After all, the first thing he did was challenge their pops with fierce glare. I will be the Pirate King, not you, old man. After Fishman Island, They should have realized they would need to rewrite their plans from scratch. Or better yet, have started before the bloody rookie came back. Marco wasn't sure if he should palm his face or laugh hysterically. For now, he would go with slightly amused. Of course, continued Whitebeard, the cheeky brat may be in danger now. Even greater danger, amended Whitebeard in his mind. That get an immediate reaction from Ace. Kaido will not let this go, not after his defeat to us. His reputation cannot take any more hits. Too many of his islands, the remaining source of resources and supplies, were on the edge of rebellion even before this. Marco nodded in agreement. And a lot of new rookies have been going after him, thinking he was weak. He's been killing them, or just beating them and recruiting them, except he's still been taking more losses than gains in the process. Luffy can handle himself, said Ace, but worry was present in his eyes. Let's hope he doesn't anger another Yonko, Yoi, joked Marco, earning a snort from Ace. Wouldn't bet on it. Although only Big Mom's left, and I'm sure we'd have heard if Luffy did something stupid like eat her candy shipments. Oh, and Shanks, except Luffy was already planning to go after him. -00 to 0. Sister. Where are you, princess? There's news. Neo. Boa Hancock, the pirate empress, the most beautiful woman in the world and beyond, ignored the noise around her and continued to concentrate on the job at hand. This was the most important thing ever. She was learning how to mend torn clothes. She would be the perfect wife for her darling fiancé. She will not let anyone else touch anything that touched his precious body. The ones she was practicing on were something she had taken from some rich buffoon on the seas, while all of the garments that Luffy had borrowed were carefully preserved for until she was skilled enough. She still couldn't forgive herself that someone else needed to repair his precious hat when it had gotten ripped, because she was lacking, her fault. It was his treasure. Only she should be able to touch and repair it while her darling watched her soft hands work. She ignored the soft hiss coming from her bed where Salome was curled up. The loud noises outside continued, getting louder and louder until they caused her hand to slip with the needle, tearing the torn clothes even more. She snapped. "Silence, you morons," she shouted, kicking the door open. "Oh princess, we finally found you, Neo, sister." The Empress' legs moved in quick attack, sending the old crone and two others flying in rage, barely missing both her sisters. Several walls crumbled. "You are worse than those beasts of men. You're distracting me from perfecting my duties as Luffy's perfect wife." "You aren't married yet, Neo," muttered old Gloriosa, earning the wrath of the Empress. For a supposedly wise woman, she lacked foresight. She was sure to find it wherever the princess leg had sent her. Let's hope. Burning with fury, Hancock turned to face the remaining beasts that dared disrupt her. She could feel her snake lurking behind her as she eyed her dear sisters and others who dared disturb her. She didn't care. She intended to destroy them slowly until she felt better. It isn't like anyone would stop her or do anything to dispute her. She was beautiful and she could do anything. Her eyes settled on target, her leg moved up and she aimed. "Luffy, Marigold," one of her sister uttered frantically. She froze, leg midair. "We are here about Luffy," repeated her other sister, Sandersonia. Rage left her, body sagged. "Luffy," she said softly, her body relaxing more, her hands coming to rest on her heart, her darling. "What happened to my darling? Hurry up," she demanded, her voice full of adoration and wistfulness. An open newspaper was promptly handed to her. She stared at her darling face staring right back to her, smiling, her sweet honey. By the time she actually began scanning the article, her remaining victims had dusted themselves, cleaned the place, and begun repairing the walls. Gloriosa had returned from her adventure by then. She may even have found foresight, because she had wisely stayed silent and several meters away. "My darling is so strong, of course he would beat a weakling like him," Hancock dismissed. "He is another warlord just like you, Neo," Gloriosa murmured to herself, and immediately winced when she realized she wasn't as quiet as she thought. "What? No one is like me. Definitely not that beast with no sense of fashion and ugly glasses like him," glared the snake princess, her snake hissing behind her in agreement. Gloriosa added quickly when she saw the look on Hancock's face evolving into anger once more. "I meant that it wasn't an easy fight. Obviously Luffy won, But it wouldn't have been easy when he would have been hurt. The silence that followed her statement was palpable. That filthy beast Flamingo. I am going to make a ruffled shirt to my darling from his skin, raged Hancock. Even the permanent smile on Salome's face seemed to diminish a bit at the murderous intent filling the air. He is being taken to impel down, Sandersonia said, just as much to fill the heavy silence as to be useful to her sister. Maybe I should pay him a visit as an ex-associate. I don't think the marine dogs would mind. I don't think that, Gloriosa. You always tell me that Titian is warlord seriously, don't you? Hancock was clearly neither wanting nor needing an answer, so Gloriosa mutely nodded. I will tell the crew to prepare the ship to head for Sabo de Archipelago, Sandersonia announced. Hurry up, Hancock snapped, while her sister scurried away to carry out her orders. Maybe we could find the ship transporting him before they reach Impel Down? They would sail through Fishman Island and Sabo de Archipelago. We can even sink the Marines so no one would know, her other sister pointed out helpfully. That would be better than visiting that filthy prison. Hancock nodded in approval. I will be going with you, Neo. No, said the Empress in finality. Rayleigh is there, Gloriosa began. She had barely had a chance to see the man while he trained Luffy after all. Pains had been taken to make people think Luffy was with the Whitebeard pirates, to add an extra layer of security for him. Hancock gave her a confused and unimpressed look at the mention of the name. The one that saved you and trained Luffy, Neo. He has a lot of connections. He may know some helpful information. You can come, ordered Hancock reluctantly, then she turned to face the others and demanded. Where are the other newspapers? We told the Seagulls to bring more copies, they assured her. Hancock nodded, humming contentedly under her breath as she strode back to her room, Salome sliding behind her. Taking out a scissors, she very carefully cut out her sweetheart's picture. She then gently put the small picture on specific empty spot on the wall, and took several steps back to appreciate her work with an adoring smile on her face. This room was filled with picture after picture ranging from small to big, from old wanted posters to new, filling up almost every wall. Only one exception was left entirely blank. That one would be for their wedding picture. And maybe their honeymoon. She was undecided about that. She could put that one on the ceiling over her bed to look at as they slept together. It was her shrine to her future husband. Although she would never admit that she was still a little hazy on what couples did on their honeymoon. Amazons reproduced thanks to some powerful drugs unique to their island, so there were no sources of information on what to do when a man was involved. -00 to 0 the red-haired pirates were laughing and celebrating the news of Luffy beating a warlord. Another one. Truly their little anchor was moving up in the world, and at this rate it would not be much longer before they saw him again. True, Luffy and Shanks' vow to each other also meant it would be a battle for supremacy between rival pirate crews, but that was half the fun, if not all of it. Besides, it would prove their captain's faith was well placed. Not that they had any doubt. It was Luffy after all. Currently they were at a little church celebrating the wedding of two friends from that island, which was under Shanks' protection. The ceremony had been interrupted halfway through, and even the chaplain was distracted by what the newscrews had dropped off. A very drunk Yassip sitting near Benny was looking at the open newspaper in Ben's lap with blurry eyes, unable to focus. Yet stubbornly, wanting to see the new wanted posters of Luffy's crew. Ben suddenly hummed and straightened himself. Hey Yassip. Doesn't this nose look familiar to you? And the name too. Huh, hiccuped Yassip, taking the wanted poster from Benny's hand. Yassip stared and stared until the picture come to focus. Then he stared some more. The nose, it was his darling wife's nose. The perfect long with slight curve can never be anything else. He forced his glued eyes to go down to the name, Usopp. Luffy, he though with joy. You found my son. His son was part of Luffy's crew. He had sailed looking for his own adventure like his daddy. Shanks, he shouted happily trying to stand up, waving the wanted poster with joy and pride. Look, my son is in Luffy's crew. Hiccup, you are not the only one to meet someone at the sea. Hiccup, I too. He trailed off, trying to focus on the name again. His mind insistently telling him that there was something he was missing. Shanks hearing his name shouted, came to their direction, swaying a bit. The dancing and drinking was still going strong. "What is it, Yassop?" a drunk Shanks asked as he put his only arm around Yassop's shoulder, also trying to look at the paper in Yassop's hands. "My son," Yassop murmured. His lips drew back as he bared his teeth and cackled long and hard like a madman. A very drunk madman. "I'm the Godfather, ah ha 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 ha, ha," Shanks shouted, his confusing, trying to be heard over Yassop's loud unstoppable laughter. "See, my son is God. I am his father, see, ha ha ha." Yassop was waving the poster in Shanks' face, only making it harder to see or read. Ben shook his head in amusement while Shanks was trying to make the connection. It took him few long seconds. "Godfather, da ha 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 ha." Listen everyone, Yassop new title is the Godfather. Someone should call the Marines to update his wanted poster, da ha 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 ha. Wait, Captain, does that mean Yassop is our new captain? What? No. Yassop stopped laughing, looking taken back. "I have a serious allergy from any kind of responsibility." He looked in remorse at the wanted poster and with a miserable hiccup, sadly said, "I guess I am not Godfather, hiccup. Pity, it is cool title." "Ah," cooed Shanks with mischief eyes. "As captain I bestow the title Godfather onto you. Da ha 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 ha. Let's celebrate our Godfather." The whole crew erupted with cheers, drinks held high. The Godfather, somewhere in the New World Capone Beeg, a mafia don turned pirate and the captain of the fire tank pirates, had a continuous sneezing attack. "Father, are you okay?" Beeg nodded, and tried to ignore the ominous shiver that run down his spine before another attack of sneezing took hold of him. Big Mom wasn't going to invite him to another tea party, he hoped as he sneezed once more. It never ended well, for someone, when Big Mom was in the mood to plan a party. "Achoo, Father, I told you everything I know about Luffy on Dressrosa," snapped Koala over the secured Den Mushi. The spunky agent had been the one on hand for that mission, as Sabo was frankly terrible for undercover work. One way or another it would have ended with him taking on Doflamingo, and the Revolutionary Army was in no shape to risk antagonizing Kaido with such a blatant challenge. Unfortunately for Koala, Luffy had been there, which meant that Sabo was all but begging for details. Does Ace have a brother complex this bad too? I feel bad for the kid. All I know," she went on, "is that he and his allies disappeared just after the fight was over. I was too busy stealing the weapons and staying out of sight of the Marines to find out more. Goodbye." She hung up with a clang, perversely satisfied that she was the one to cut him off for once. "Damn it, Koala," cursed and upset Sabo. "Her reports on Doflamingo's weapons are interesting," mused Dragon, leader of the Revolutionary Army, ignoring the whining of his chief of staff while he was calling Koala back without success. "Our next step is to discover where they were manufactured." He was not nearly as concerned for his son as Sabo was, and indeed had not revealed his relationship to Luffy for fear of making things awkward, or have Sabo rant about the boy to him. His chief of staff had become a little obsessed since regaining his memories. Sabo had not known why he felt so rattled after seeing a picture of Luffy and Ace in the same newspaper article 2 years ago, yet it had been clearly visible to Koala and Hack. While none of them had known why exactly Sabo had been reacting that way, they had recognized that the two pirates were possible triggers to reclaim the blonde's lost memories. Despite knowing that regaining that might lead Sabo to leave the Revolt, agreed to help their friend to finally know and confront the truth of his past. They had been very close to succeeding just as Nico Robin had arrived, and having learned about it, despite the recovery process taking place inside a locked room, and she had provided the final piece by turning up with several platters of cooked meat. Then everything clicked together for Sabo, before collapsing peacefully into a week-long coma as his mind readjusted itself. Fortunately, Sabo had managed to join Robin for her reunion with her crew, letting him see his precious little brother again. The little crybaby had been blubbering so much he could hardly speak, and Sabo had barely kept back his own tears. The situation had very nearly turned disastrous until Robin had explained the situation to the rest of crew, because some of them were looking a little violently protective at the stranger in a top hat who had shown up. Especially when they realized Luffy had believed Sabo dead, and wondered why he had put his family through such pain. Still, Dragon thought to himself, It's for the best that the world at large remains unaware of Luffy's heritage. He eyed his chief of staff, still unsuccessfully trying to call for more information about Luffy. At least he wasn't gawking without blinking like a creep at the Vivre card anymore. Yes, it was a good idea not to let him know about their connection. It wouldn't be ranting that he would face, but more likely a fight. Dragon shook his head and took the papers he needed with him as he walked out. Nothing was going to be accomplished today with his chief of staff like this. -00 to 0. Do you have a better idea, Zoro Ya? Trafalgar Law asked as politely as he could manage. He was probably failing, except that Law could barely find it in himself to care. Despite his and Tony Ya's best efforts in reattaching his amputated arm, it still ached deep into the bone, and the rest of his body was little better off. Being shot several times a day would do that to you. And worst of all, just as he had finally avenged Corazon, the person that made the completion of his quest even possible, had been abducted. Right in front of Law's eyes. While he did nothing, could do nothing. A bitter taste had filled his mouth since then. However, the part of him that possessed what remained of his survival instincts still insisted it was best not to irritate the pirate hunter at all. Roronoa Zoro was pacing like a caged beast across the deck of the Thousand Sunny, left hand never leaving the hilts of his swords. Teeth bared and veins throbbing in his forehead. It was obvious to all that the first mate of the Straw Hat Pirates wanted nothing more than to cut something. Worst of all, the one and only man he would take orders from, the only one who could reign in that rage, was the victim here. The scary thing was that the other Straw Hats were little better off. Nose Ya and Tony Ya were acting frantic, yet he knew that energy was just waiting for a target. Nami Ya had not let her staff out of her hands, and she was ready to verbally flay the hide of anyone who ticked her off. The only reason the situation was not worse was because Nico Ya was working full-time to help her keep relatively calm, while whispering dark promises to the younger woman, of what they would do to the ones responsible for this tragedy. What they would do for a very, very long time. As a doctor, Law had the misfortune to know that yes, people could indeed survive all of that, to their despair. Robo Ya was quiet. A brooding silence that was unnerving to the extreme despite how relatively little time Law had spent with him. Bone Ya was calmly playing his violin, bringing to life a gentle tune that helped ease the tension aboard, although instead of a violin bow he was using the naked blade of his cane sword, and there was an inexplicable and literal chill around him. Law knew to the bottom of his heart that he should be eternally grateful that none of them blamed him for leaving Straw Hat Ya vulnerable. There was something dark in their expressions ever since their captain had been taken. "We need all the help we can get," Nose Ya spoke up. "No offense," he said to the other newcomers. Bartolomeo, Cavendish, Don Sai, Leo, Idio, Haruden, Orlumbus, and more. Over 5,600 men and women who had sworn their blades and lives to the cause of Monkey D. Luffy, starting with his rescue. All of them believed they owed him too large a debt to do otherwise, and neither Law nor Zoro were going to argue with them. None of them showed themselves to be offended, which was a good sign. It meant they were aware who exactly they were going to face in their quest to save Straw Hat Ya. As bad as Doflamingo and his crew were, this was much, much worse. Nose Ya was right, they needed all the help they could get, but they also needed to move fast. God knew what Big Mom would to him if they were too late. In addition, there was Kinemon and his son Momonosuke, the other samurai Kanjuro, and a guilt-stricken Rebecca and Viola. Kairos was along to make sure the two young women would be safe, yet Law was wary of the dangerous look in Viola's eyes. The young woman seemed to take particular exception to Blackleg Ya's abduction. Continuing, Nose Ya elaborated. "Another crew of New World veterans won't help, and we're too exposed here. It's not just that the Big Mom pirates might come back, but the Marines are right here too." Indeed, Admiral Fujitora had been suspiciously quiet in the day since Doflamingo's defeat. "Don't worry, Usoland, we will help save Luffy land. Like he helped us," proclaimed Leo as the dwarves cheered their determination around him. "All right," snarled the pirate hunter, cutting off any more cheers. "Set a course for Zo." -00 to 0. "Are you sure about this, Mama?" Prospero asked diffidently, the perfectly obedient son. After all, they were going to be deliberately sending or leaking this news to everyone that mattered across the globe. Mama, of course." The world government knows better than to act rashly against me, and it'll put a scare into them and all those other upstarts. Especially since everyone's assuming that he bested Doflamingo on Whitebeard's orders, that he was trained by the man. But once they learn the truth, they will believe my darling son infiltrated his ranks and caused chaos for the world government on my orders. And our agents will fuel such rumors. Baron Tamago thought with admiration. Still, for reasons he could not explain, he was a little hesitant to take such rash action. In all the rush, had he finished that full background check into Straw Hat, Luffy? It was probably all Bon. Granted, what they were doing was unprecedented for the Charlotte family, yet Mama was confident that global shock value was worth it. Once more Big Mom leered down at her personal copy of the upcoming wedding invitation, which would be sent the world over so that everyone knew what was happening. A double wedding. The first groom, third son of Vinnie Smoke, Sanji. The first bride, 35th daughter of Charlotte, Pudding. In addition, the second groom, grandson of Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp, son of Monkey D. Dragon the Revolutionary, and 30th son of Charlotte, Luffy. The second bride, first daughter of Vinnie Smoke, Reiju. Mama's wish was coming true. It was going to be a grandiose celebration full of cakes, sweets and happiness. Whose? Depends on who you ask. Previously, the Battle of Marineford never happened, so Ace and Whitebeard are alive, Blackbeard is dead, and the name of Luffy's father was never made public to the world. Luffy and Sanji were kidnapped by Katakuri of the Big Mom Pirates, upon the discovery that Luffy was the son of Dragon, a former husband of Big Mom who stole the child they had had together. Enraged, the Straw Hat Pirates prepare for action. Meanwhile, as news spreads of Luffy's victory over Doflamingo, if not his kidnapping, people assume Luffy is acting as a cat's paw for the recovering Whitebeard, that the strongest in the world, is preparing to make his move. In preparation for her own plans, Big Mom reveals to the world Luffy's heritage, and that even as Sanji is to marry Pudding, Luffy is to marry Vinsmoke Reiju. -00 the news hit the world like a thunderclap. Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat Pirate and most notorious supernova of them all, the bane of both Enies Lobby and Impelled Down, although why he hit the last one was never clear, was grandson of the greatest Navy hero alive. The son of Dragon the Revolutionary, and perhaps worst of all, the son of a pirate emperor. The child of Charlotte Linlin, Big Mom. The world was in an uproar. Wasn't he Whitebeard's ally? Or was it all act? A spy to Big Mom? A double spy? Triple? Some even said that Straw Hat actually worked for Red Hair Shanks. Maybe he was really an agent on behalf of Dragon, forming an unholy alliance with one of the emperors, or all three emperors. Others suspected him of being a calculating mastermind that had all of them and more eating from his hand. The future Pirate King in the making. It really didn't matter which was right, because this changed everything. Well, grinned former Fleet Admiral Sengoku, I'm glad this isn't my mess to clean up. I got out just in time. He had just finished his conversation with Fleet Admiral Sakazuki, using an encrypted channel via White Den Den Mushi, and it was clear Marine HQ was just short of going up in flames. Or erupting like a volcano for that matter. And looks like you were right to suggest we not make any hasty declarations about Straw Hat, Fujitora, he added. The massive man in question merely finished sipping down the soup broth to finish his snack. Mayhaps, though we'll still have to wait and see. For now, I've ordered us to meet up with Vice Admiral Smoker. This is a delicate situation, and I want our best Straw Hat expert. So Linlin's broadcasting it too far and wide to keep it quiet? Verified the elderly Vice Admiral Suru. Yes, nodded Sengoku. It's not a bad move, as she now gains whatever reputation Straw Hat has. The world government will print his heritage, and acknowledge he is with the Big Mom Pirates for now. They aren't going to say anything about the wedding, however. Why not? Suru asks, with a slight frown. That was half the message she spread. What's the point? Sengoku sighed in frustration. You know what? Now his old friend appeared particularly irritated. They're trying to avoid a panic at the idea of the Vinsmokes allying with her? Especially since they've spent all these years denying they even exist? Exactly. There's another reason, Fujitora throws in. Straw Hat, he ain't the type to take bein' kidnapped lying down. Nor a weddin' against his will. He might solve the whole problem for us. By rebelling against Big Mom and getting killed, mused Sengoku aloud. That would do the trick, and without any cost to the Marines. Or without the wedding having time to become an issue, Suru adds on. Given how he is AD, that must be what the Elder Stars are banking on. A small nod is Sengoku's only response to that, while Fujitora stared blankly at them with his dead eyes. As the others do not elaborate, he did not press the issue of how being AD was significant. After all, there would be other opportunities to learn about something that apparently had the world government nervous. Just then, their sharp ears caught the sounds of gossiping Marines walking by in the corridor outside their room. And Vice Admiral Garp's grandson. The hero. The man who brought in Gold Roger himself. I know, I can't believe it, TCH. It's just too bad he wasn't able to save his grandson. Imagine if he'd had the chance to raise Straw Hat, train him from a young age, then he'd have been a loyal Marine. Oh my, you're right. What a waste, I bet he would have made it as an admiral. Yeah, I can see it, with Vice Admiral Garp's training, he would have been the youngest and strongest admiral ever. Yeah, if only Garp had managed to be the one to take care of him. Although, as much as I respect the man, he's crazy. So his grandson would be as crazy as him in that case. Don't say that about a vice admiral, you know I'm right, I've served with him, I'd die for him, but he's still great at crazy. Then they passed around the corner, and Fujitora glanced at Sengoku. Is something wrong? Your heart's not soundin' right. Indeed, the man was pale and drawing deep breaths. A mini-me Garp in the Marines. Another D like him, he whispers. His face became even more ashen. He looked sick. No need for the pirates attacking us, the Navy wouldn't have survived. I'd have dug a tunnel under my chair and escaped leaving the place to burn. Your chair is on an island, and water surrounds it, Suru remarked, mirth dancing in her aged eyes. An underwater tunnel, insisted the Buddha, shuddering as if icy wind was blowing non-stop. Get a hold of yourself, snapped Suru, now deciding this had gone far enough. Seeking a safer subject, and because he respected the inspector too much to want him to go into shock, Fujitora changed the subject. I wonder how Vice Admiral Garp is handling this. Ha, scoffed Vice Admiral Suru. That oaf probably doesn't even know, and his subordinates would be too afraid to tell him. She trailed off as Sengoku stood up. The evil smirk etched across his face would have made Whitebeard hesitate. Excuse me, he pleasantly said. I got to go make a little call. -00 to 0. Garp, Sengoku. How is your vacation going? Get the new tea I sent you? At least send me some crackers. You cheapskate. It isn't a vacation. I am Inspector Jenner, Sengoku protested but he was cut off. Typical. I am having blast teaching these good-for-nothing boys. I will make good Marines out of those scoundrels. Bawahahaha. Course, I've gotta head down to Ryugu Kingdom in a bit to pick up King Neptune and his family. So, what do you want? You don't usually call. Actually I can't remember the last time you did. Even when you were active fleet admiral. Bawahahaha. Miss me, now that there's no action in your life? Miss him? How would someone miss a toothache? Did you hear the news? News? PFTFTTF. No. Oh, you mean my adorable grandson blasting away that scoundrel dog Doflamingo. Bawahahaha as expected from my grandson. Bawahahaha. You know the scoundrel dog worked for us, right? Did he? Bawahahaha. I will admit, it's good that we got rid of him. Right. Right. Luffy would have made a great Marine. Sweat dropped. I meant the other news. What did Luffy beat another Shichibukai? Or maybe a Yonko this time? Who is it? Big Mom, begins Sengoku with glee. As expected from Luffy, beating the old hag, Garp cut in. Is his mother, did you know? Silence greeted his question. Huh? Garp finally said. Sengoku, what did you say? Big Mom, Sengoku paused. I heard that part, Garp complained. Is your grandson's mother? I assume you don't know. Then came a long pause, with the Den Den Mushi staring right ahead, without blinking. Sengoku was about to call for help. He thought he broke the obnoxious D. He certainly deserved it after all that Sengoku had to put up with over the years. If he had been anyone else, he would have cracked long ago. Sengoku had come close few times. Really close, still, he felt a tiny bit of pity, and was Akon'd in command, Bogard. The poor man was with Garp for almost 27 years, he would know what to do. That makes sense. Garp breathed out. What? Sengoku demanded, uncharacteristically startled. Any thought of pity evaporated. Did the moron actually know? This was not how it was supposed to go. Where were the screams of denial? And cursing his son for corrupting his grandson before the boy was even born. When my moron son brought me baby Luffy and told me to take care of him, I demanded to know about his mother. Who in her right mind would agree to be with an idiot like him and even give birth to? The old man tapered off. And, demanded Sengoku impatiently, trying not to show his irritation. If Garp ever felt whatever he was doing was annoying to someone else, he would latch onto it like a starving dog for a bone, if only to enjoy seeing them squirm. The hero of the Marines was a sick man in many respects. And that was without even getting into his training for recruits, or the hints he had let drop on what he had put his grandsons through as children. He said, "Mom, huh?" Sengoku didn't try to hide his frustration this time. Garp wasn't even paying attention. I thought he was trying to be funny, but I should have known better. That moron son of mine has no sense of humor. He even had the audacity to tell me that I was wrong. Rambling on about how babies actually came out of tubes, he said. The ungrateful brat, I took pains to explain it to him, because who else would do it, if not his dear father? And I did really good job if I say so myself. Thorough. I brought him pictures, and even did one of those stupid slideshows that you keep nagging me to use. And I even searched the base until I found the Marines' official book about sexual conduct, mind you it was an old one. And even explained to him in detail about the ship and anchor. Sengoku tuned him out, shaking his head in dismay, and murmured under his breath, I think I understand why he built the Revolutionary Army. Then Sengoku let out a long-suffering sigh and rubbed his head, trying to keep the incoming headache at bay. He was already regretting his decision to call and was wondering if he should tell Garp the bit that wasn't in the news, about the marriage or not. Better not, he thought. Who knew what the crazy old man would do? It would definitely bring down trouble for the Marines, no doubt about it. But on the other hand. And I told him you should always, and I mean always, use protection. I mean look at what happened with me. Garp, snapped Sengoku, not waiting for an acknowledgement and dived right in. Besides, if he did not head the lunatic off now, he would go for an in-depth description of how he lost his virginity in such graphic detail it would make one of those writers of trashy pulp fiction blush. Straw Hat is getting married, he all but shouted. Best of luck, Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. You're going to need it, Sengoku would admit that he was a bit gleeful. With any luck, Kuzan might even get the job after that man went insane. Besides, if Big Mom did get Straw Hat as a lackey, her considerable resources backing his frankly insane capacity for mayhem, it would be a disaster. Unfortunately, the 5 Elder Stars would not risk taking action given how the Navy was still recovering. Yet it occurred to the Buddha that if a wild card was thrown into play. And the most important thing is to be. What, huh? Married you say, Luffy? My Luffy, to whom? Garp paused for a second, probably to finally breathe. The shock had struck hard enough that his body had finally remembered that he was a human being, but was he? That needed air to speak. Big Mom is arranging a marriage. What? How dare that old scoundrel hag? Which was frankly ironic, given how Garp was literally a decade older than her. Just try convincing the overgrown adolescent of that. Finally, the screaming and cursing he expected. Sengoku smiled. Really, he needed to speak with the offices back home about new feature for those Den Den Mushi, something to lower the volume. It felt as if thunder had struck his eardrums. Marriage, I will arrange Luffy's marriage, we'll find him a good marine. Suru is with you isn't she? Give me her, Sengoku, bring me Suru. You want your grandson to marry Suru? Sengoku shouted. Garp had officially lost it. What? No, you moron. Suru knows all the good female marines, but now that you said it, Suru, it isn't such bad. No, it's a very bad idea, and I am so sorry to have said it. Sengoku tried hard not to imagine Suru's reaction if she knew he had even suggested that. Better leave this place soon, very soon. If he had not left the room to make this call in private. Sengoku was very well aware that every Marine aboard would later testify that his prolonged, painful, and utterly humiliating death was the result of an elaborate suicide, committed by his hands alone. Fine, but she would have kept him on a leash. Bawahahahaya, bawahahahaya. Garp laughed his obnoxious loud laughter. His anger all forgotten. The mood swings that the man had would put a pregnant woman with triplets to shame. -00 on Vice Admiral Smoker's ship, Captain Tashiji's head swiveled around, as she tried to identify the tingling down her spine. There was nothing in sight, yet long experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now they were screaming. Danger! Danger! Run and hide, don't look back and abandon the others to their fate, run. -00 Sengoku sighed, getting tired of waiting for Garp's laughter to diminish, and asked, "What are you going to do?" Garp quieted down, and softly asked, "Where's the wedding taking place?" A chill ran down Sengoku's back. It's Big Mom we're talking about. So most likely in Toto Land, and on. Sengoku didn't finish his sentence. Bogard, come here right this second," Garp's voice boomed loudly. "Garp, what do you intend?" Sengoku tried to ask over the loud shouts, but was ignored. "Ah, Kobe and Helmeppo," Garp suddenly said. "Sir," two voices answered him. Sengoku vaguely remembered the two young men that Garp had introduced in the last war. Pink and yellow came to his mind. "Find Bogard for me, and tell the navigator to change direction to the New World." "But sir, shouldn't we be heading for Fishman Island? To pick up the royal family?" "Change of plans, something come up and new orders, hurry up and bring Bogard to me," he ordered. Sengoku heard the affirmative reply, and the bang of a door being shut as the two young Marines scurried away to follow their orders. "You suck at lying," Sengoku remarked dryly. "Bawahahahaya," Garp laughed, but it wasn't as merry as before. "What do you intend to do?" Sengoku repeated. Then he added, "They are keeping the marriage quiet. No need to explain who they were." Only Luffy's heritage was revealed. "I don't think Big Mom would let this lay down for long. Don't make things more complicated. Stop worrying, Sengoku, or all your hair will be even grayer." Why did you worry about this ungrateful fool? I am going to do what every good and responsible grandfather that raised his cute grandson would do." Sengoku didn't hold his breath for the answer, he really didn't. "I will walk him down the aisle." Sengoku wondered if he should or shouldn't end the call. You know the bride is the one that gets walked down the aisle, not the groom. "Bawahahahaya. What are you talking about? Luffy can't marry without me. He needs me to walk him down." Sengoku eyed the twitching nose of the Den Mushi, and decided it really wasn't worth it. Yes, whatever, just don't do anything stupid, outrageous, dangerous, that destroys the delicate balance. Maybe this was not such a good idea after all. It was really good that he wasn't the on in charge right now. He was so very grateful. Bawahahahahaya. Oh, somewhere in East Blue. Nded Jill. She was a slim woman, with brown curls bouncing around her face whenever she moved, and she was moving now. From one side to the other. Her eyes searching, her face thunderous. "Huh?" answered the bartender, taking a step back with Jill's suspicious face so close to him. She was checking if someone was hidden behind the bar, using her elbows to hoist herself over. "Who are you looking for?" Aaron asked, as he was taking down the chairs from above the tables to start the day and giving them a pointless sweep with his rag. The dirt accumulated on each chair had its own life forms growing on them by now. "Who do you think?" "Who else?" Jill yelled, her face showing rage. "Excuse me?" the bartender asked, and then shirked away. Everyone knew of Jill's temper, and to stay away from it. It was one of the reasons why she was responsible for the betting pool. No one wanted that woman getting in his face. It really just didn't end well. "You mean Rick?" asked Aaron and added, "Haven't seen him for the past week." "Yeah," affirmed the bartender and added when the glare was turned on him. "True, not since we found out about Doflamingo's defeat. That damn bastard, when I get my hand on him, I am going to make him pay double, triple, that." Jill seethed. "Give me a drink." The bartender felt relieved to find something to do with his hands and begin preparing her drink, a strong one. "He didn't pay," said Aaron knowingly and amused. "As usual, the only one. He always seems to disappear when there is paying to do." True, we don't let him keep a tab for more than a week. Or else we don't see the money. Jill snorted a bit in sympathy. The bartender put her drink in front of her, and not finding something smart to say, but hating the silence, he asked. Why do you call him? You're the only one. Because he is, Jill snapped, and then taking a gulp of her drink, she relaxed and explained, a lopsided smile adorning her face. One of the drunk fools called him once instead of Rick, and it stuck. Especially with his ish personality and all. And you have to admit he fits the description. The bartender looked on confused, while Aaron snorted with laughter. Physically I mean, Jill added smartly, hiding her face behind the cup. The bartender opened his mouth and then closed it with a thump, shaking his head to dispel the image from his mind while Aaron laughed harder. What is going on? Vin asked, eyeing the three occupants as he arrived. One had her back to him, one was laughing, and the other looked perplexed. How's it going, Vin? Jill greeted him cheerily, turning to give him wave. Vin never betted. I am fine, just got the newspaper now, and wanted to read it with something to eat and maybe a drink. The bartender shook himself, and with a relived sigh, muttered, the usual? Sure thing. Vin only nodded with a raised eyebrow. So what's new? Aaron asked, coming to Vin's regular table and taking down the chairs. Didn't read it yet, but it looks promising. Oh? Jill intoned, turning once more to look at him. The first page has Straw Hat Luffy's face all over it, and the title. Vin sat down, giving a nod of thanks to Aaron, and folded the newspaper open, reading out loud. Straw Hat's darkest secret, his dangerous heritage. Those reporters do love their dramatics, Jill muttered, but she looked interested. True, muttered Aaron. Vin opened the newspaper and began reading, and whistling, and reading and whistling. What? Snapped Jill after the fifth time. Oh my, Vin said out loud, his hand rubbing his mustache with care, and continued silently reading. The bartender came from behind the bar with a plate of food and drink, putting them on the table in front of Vin, and stepped behind Vin to read from above his shoulder, his eyes squinting. Oh my, that's unexpected, he muttered. Oh come on, what? Aaron stopped working and moved to stand in front of them. I think our theory about Whitebeard is wrong, the bartender finally said, uncertain. Huh? What theory? Jill asked, her face showing impatience. What? Really? Why? We thought that Straw Hat was working for Whitebeard, or at least his ally, you know, because of the last war, explained Aaron to a perplexed Jill. Too early to say, murmured Vin, starting to reread from the beginning. What's the news about? Demanded Jill impatiently, her eyebrow raising to show her annoyance at being kept in the dark. The bartender was unsure where to start, and looked pleadingly at Vin, who sighed and said. Our East Blue celebrity has connection to a few worldly people, to say the least. Both Aaron and Jill give him their full attention, and the bartender used this chance to go back and hide behind the bar. Vin waited a moment until Jill opened her mouth again, to say. His grandfather is Monkey D. Grab the Fist, the hero of the Marines, and the one to catch the Pirate King. Wow, breathed out Aaron. Even Jill raised an eyebrow with appreciation. A pirate as a grandson, it was probably a shock to the old man. There's more, murmured the bartender, unable to contain himself. True, said Vin humbly, and with only a slight pause he continued. His father is no one else except the most dangerous and infamous man in the world, Monkey D. Dragon the Revolutionary. Both of them stared, open-mouthed. Even the bartender still seemed to be finding it hard to swallow this bit of information. Wait, just wait, that means, that Garp's son is Dragon, oh my god. The irony, this is priceless. I wish I had a betting pool about Dragon's family, ha 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 ha. Jill laughed, and hit the bar with her empty cup, which the bartender hurried to fill it when it stopped bouncing. Unbelievable. What a family, you see, breathed out Aaron, his face had a dreamy quality to it. The grandson is a pirate, the son is the revolutionary, and the grandfather a marine. What a, Aaron stopped, unable to find the right words. Dysfunctional family, Jill supplied, between bouts of drink and laughter. Well yeah, but not the word I was looking for. Although that doesn't explain why the Whitebeard theory is a bust, he could still be his ally. Aaron looked at the bartender with questioning eyes. His mother is the issue, commented the bartender, filling Jill's cup again. Mother? Who could it be? A leader of the lawless revolutionary as a father? marine hero as a grandfather. What more? Something can top this. Jill merrily laughed, looking from the bartender to Vin expectantly. Who? Asked Aaron, looking at Vin pleadingly. Big Mom, announced Vin. Emperor Big Mom. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of Jill falling out of her chair. The Yonko? Aaron shouted finally. Indeed, the Yonko Big Mom is his mother, repeated Vin, calmly drinking from his cup, savoring the drink as much as their stunned expressions. But, yeah, then he can't be working for Whitebeard, he is clearly working for his mother, it's just crazy. No, it doesn't make sense, protested Jill, trying to stand up and somehow falling. She gave up and sat on the floor and elaborated. I mean, why would he help Whitebeard in the war? Big Mom would better be served if Whitebeard lost, she would have snatched more territories. Then his father, maybe, murmured Aaron, taking a chair to sit on. Maybe he was the one to raise him? We don't know much about Straw Hat's childhood after all. Or anything really. I can't see it, Vin answered. The Revolutionary Army all about changing the government, not chaos, but new order. A pirate would not serve him well, 'cause it would be a bad example. Then his grandfather offered an unsure Aaron, earning 3 snorts of disbelief. Even if he was kinda undercover, I just can't see it. Eni's lobby, agreed the bartender. All of them remembered the first time Straw Hat name came to their attention. Yeah, he could have become a warlord or something, except her warlord join him and leave his title, added Jill. Maybe he is working alone, muttered the bartender. Everyone turned to face him. Jill finally stood up and leaned on the bar. Trying to prove himself, making a name for himself that doesn't come from his family, he tried to explain, taking a step back. Yeah, maybe, muttered Aaron, sounding perplexed. Jill hummed to herself and then shrieked with delight like toddler with new toy and yelled. This is great, I have several new betting pools to prepare. Who does Straw Hat Luffy answer to? Are Dragon and Big Mom allies? The fate of Garp? Are Whitebeard and Big Mom's allies? Or maybe with Dragon? So many possibilities. I really like this Straw Hat kid, he's good for business. Indeed, murmured the bartender, thinking all of the clients that would dwell in his bar to discuss the news tonight. Anyone want to join the bet about who Straw Hat's working for? Asked Jill, not letting any business opportunity escape her. No way, muttered the bartender. Not yet, said Aaron, deep in thought. No, thank you, Vin finished. Jill gulped down the remainder of her drink in one go, ready to leave and begin spreading the news of new betting pools. He has a really remarkable family, murmured Aaron to himself, yet was heard by Jill passing by him. You mean crazy, insane, unbelievably abnormal, and that's just what they say about his parents. She turned to Vin, and drunkenly remarked. Really, the next thing you would tell me, is that his wayward uncle is red hair, and his other grandfather is Whitebeard, Kaido is his cousin, and the fleet admiral is his second cousin once removed. The current one, or the previous one? Vin calmly asked, the mirth dancing clearly in his eyes. Oh my god, yes. Garp's supposedly best friends with the previous fleet admiral, Sengoku. Maybe he's his godfather or something. This is crazy, crazy I tell you. Utterly, agreed Aaron. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me tomorrow that's all true, the bartender muttered to himself. Really, it mattered none to him. All news was welcome, if it made sure his business was booming. -00 Princess Nefeltari Vivi was flummoxed. So you're saying that they're both princes? She demanded. With a sigh, King Cobra nodded, not meeting her eyes. It took her a moment to realize it was out of shame. What? Clearing his throat, and then spending a few seconds coughing, her father explained. The Vinsmokes, despite their crimes and reputation, are still acknowledged as a royal family, with a seat at the Reverie. King Vinsmoke Judge is militant, arrogant, and provocative. Due to his readiness to go to war, he could easily be a disruptive force at these meetings, and he knows it. He uses the threat of this to bully his way through things without actually pushing too far. Especially since everyone knows he will declare war if he decides it's worth it. His eyes hardened. In fact, outside of the Reverie, he personally killed 3 kings at the same time. Their successors are too afraid to challenge him now. Neither of them were supposed to know about the upcoming double wedding, and indeed even the king of Alabasta was not important enough to warrant an invitation. Despite this, as a monarch, Cobra had access to certain classified briefings, especially ones related to the very reverie they were traveling to. Moreover, after Crocodile's near conquest of his homeland, Igaram's duties as the man who had first uncovered the machinations of Baroque works had switched more from being captain of the Alabasta Royal Guard to further developing their intelligence channels. So yes, the Nefeltari family knew more than most people in the world on what was happening with the savior of their kingdom. However, and now Cobra's eyes glazed over a bit as he ran through the possible scenarios and outcomes. By entering into an alliance with Big Mom of all people, Judge will most likely lose his own seat at the reverie. Which he must know, and believe to be an acceptable price. Vivi sharply chipped in. Then she looked confused again. So when Sanji was saying his codename was Prince, he really was one. Yes, rather amusing even, Cobra smiled. We were in the presence of rival royalty and never recognized that. Then he became grim once more, and the same goes for Luffy. Through conquest and various marriages, he saw no reason to note most of those weddings had been done without the consent of the grooms. By the laws that govern such matters, Charlotte Linlin is technically an acknowledged queen in her own right, making Luffy a prince as well. She wasn't and would never be invited to the reverie because she is a violent pirate, and none of us would be alive afterward, but she is still recognized as a legitimate queen. Vivi could only blink in disbelief as she processed this news and reflected upon Luffy's every action. His own insight into how best to help her country. He truly is worthy of being a king. Aloud, all she could manage was, "What a crew I sailed with, and I thought they were amazing before." I think Nami said she was adopted, and Zoro never said anything about his parents. What are the odds of them secretly being a princess and prince too? -00 far off in the East Blue, on an island more isolated than most, the kingdom prepared itself for the reverie. It was a peaceful kingdom, and while poor it was also safe. For all the grief that choked at their king and queen, they held fast to their duty. "You should be the one to go in my place," the king said to his beloved wife, his green mustache failing to hide his smile. "You say that every time," she smiled back, beautiful red hair falling down over her shapely body. "They just aren't ready to learn the women are really in charge." He barked out a laugh and then turned to head towards his ship, his trusty sword ever at his side. Seriously, when his wife had told him he if continued to wear it to sleep, he could sleep on the couch, he had really struggled to come to a decision. Then he had to bribe her with foot massages for daring to take so long. Yet ever since their children had been stolen away in the night, she had not complained anymore. It had been more than 20 years. Whoever said that time heals all wounds was truly misinformed. They lived with open bleeding wounds in their chests to serve their country, while hoping to see their sweet children someday. They held on by hope and duty. Their young, strong boy had been stolen away at just over a year old, along with his baby sister. The kidnappers had been hunted down, yet not before their children had been separated to make them harder to track, and lost. Maybe even dead. None of them ever said that aloud, but deep in their hearts they feared it. Yet, they struggled to hold onto a tiny hope in their heart, imagining how their baby boy and girl would look today. What would they do with their life? Would they be a natural leader, and wield the sword like their father? Be a shrewd administrator, with rare talent for meteorology and drawing like their mother? Hope, as small as it was, still lit their hearts. To this day, however, neither the king nor the queen had given up hope. -00 a smile begun to bloom on his frozen face. Aokiji was never as sure as he was in this moment of his decision to retire from the Marines. Fleet Admiral Sakazuki was going to have his hands full dealing with this, and the psychopath was welcome to it. Aokiji folded the newspaper back, put it in his bag, and started riding his bicycle aimlessly as his devil fruit power made him a path. He was on an open vacation without an end date. No paperwork to fill, no troops to lead, no one interrupting his naps. Best decision ever. Despite the size of the fleet she was leading, Nami navigated the Thousand Sunny and all their allies through the waves and hailstorm with a grace and mastery that was humbling. Frankie followed her every order as he steered them true, and everyone else within the Grand Fleet leapt to Obihad could be heard even over the roars of nature. "You're sure that's all we need? And they're Luffy's?" Usopp asked. Then he frantically waved his hands. "Not that I'm doubting you, I just..." "It's all right, Usopp," Robin diplomatically cut in. Things were tense, especially without Luffy around. "We all want to be sure it goes perfectly." Then she reached down to rub Chopper's head, "And I'm sure you got it right." "Of course," the little doctor chirped, holding a little glass container holding fingernail clippings. After being on such a rough island for his training for so long, Luffy's hygiene had suffered. Ergo, once they had all gotten over the joy of being reunited after 2 years, Nami had dragged him aside at one point to trim his nails and wash his hair in a bucket. Of course then he had gone swimming in the ocean while approaching Fishman Island, but it was the thought that counted. "That should be enough," Law spoke up, having already glanced at the amount there. "We can easily make a Vivre card for Straw Hat Yaw once we reach Zo." For while there were several survivors of the New World present in the fleet, none of them were familiar with the precise process necessary to make those little slips of paper that would allow the Straw Hat Pirates to find where Luffy was. And confirm he was alive. Because he was Luffy, and of course he was alive. And if not, they would burn the world. You think this is a joke? Have you met these lunatics of his crew? No, Luffy means the world ends. Deep breath anyways, right? So, the Straw Hat Pirates and their allies had to find someone who could make a Vivre card, and by happy coincidence, Law's navigator and unofficial first mate, Beppo, knew how to do it. So they were following his own Vivre card, in Law's possession, to Zo to take care of that. So for now it was all in Nami's hands, while Frankie manned the helm. Zoro was meditating. At first Law thought this a bit unusual, especially given how much the violent man had previously been either napping or exercising on the way to Dressrosa, except that the ease with which the swordsman entered the trance made him realize that the man was surprisingly spiritual. Well, in touch with his inner self, at least. The samurai and Momonosuke were joining Zoro in meditation, which kept them quiet. As for Kairos, Rebecca, and Viola, they were enjoying some overdue family bonding by taking up cooking for the crew. Although the food was frankly bland in comparison to what regularly came out of there. In fairness, they were hampered by the fact that Robin had gently told them they could not use any of the kitchen knives, as they were Sanjis and proper chefs took such matters seriously, ever so gently. When not otherwise occupied, the Straw Hats distracted themselves by seeing to their ship, training, or whatever else could help them manage their stress. It was a testament to how tense the atmosphere was, that even Caesar Clown had developed enough common sense to keep his trap shut. He had wisely concluded that his captors would welcome the opportunity to vent some frustration on someone they already hated. "Oh my, still this awful weather?" queried Brooke as he walked up, sipping on some tea, while idly flicking away a few pieces of hail the size of bowling balls with his cane. The vast majority of which never even approached the fleet as Nami did something to change the air patterns. "Unfortunately," sighed Robin. "We haven't even seen a news coup for days, it's been so bad. Otherwise we might have gotten some news about Luffy." They had been so isolated, they had heard nothing since the articles about him beating Doflamingo. Usopp disdainfully snorts. "Probably just a lot of government propaganda." "But we won't see if we've gotten any new bounties," sniffed Chopper. "Well, and now," Usopp puffed up his chest, "I don't mean to brag, although with how spectacular I did. I bet I got a huge new bounty. Maybe bigger than the rest of you." -00 Sister, sister. Someone shouted as the door flung open. If it was anyone except her sister, they would have been sent flying right off the ship itself. "What?" demanded the pirate empress irritably. Really, they were a pirate crew. They did not need to call on her for every small matter. She was no one's babysitter. "It's Luffy." Sandersonia rushed into the cabin of their ship, a newspaper in her hand. It was decided unanimously it was better to leave any Luffy issue to the Snake Princess's sisters. "Oh my Luffy. Darling looks handsome like always." Hancock snatched the newspaper from her sister. She stared at the picture dreamily. "Sister, look at the—" her sister urgently said, her hand coming to point at something on the paper. Hancock hid her hand away, her eyes not leaving her darling's beautiful face. "Hush, Sandersonia, let me enjoy. Oh, how handsome," the smile, "it doesn't seem to end." The words written above were a bit annoying, but they didn't hide Luffy's face, so she would forgive them. Every picture should be this big. She shall send a letter to Morgans, the president of the World Economic Journal, and demand he did. What Sandersonia? Her tone of voice left no doubt that she would be extremely unhappy if the topic that interrupted her wasn't important, aka not about Luffy. The article is about Luffy's heritage. Oh? Hancock removed her glued eyes from her beloved's picture, and raised an eyebrow at her sister. His father is Dragon the Revolutionary, his grandfather is Vice Admiral Garp, the one that caught the Pirate King, and his mother is Big Mom, the Yonko, blurted out Sandersonia. Hancock had already returned to staring at her beloved's picture midway, her eyes turning adoring when she ran them across his smiling face. So? It's kinda a big deal. The Empress huffed with irritation, and with a heated glare infused with hockey, she announced, I don't care who his parents are. Even if the devil spawned him. Luffy will be my husband. He is the only one for me, do you understand? I understand, sister. The form of her slumped sister turned to leave. Sandersonia, yes? Sandersonia turned back hopefully. Order more newspapers, and how many times have I told you to bring me the newspaper immediately, not to read them and then bring them? I should see my darling's face first. -00 Hawkeye, Mahawk glanced the extra-large, bolded title declaring the heritage of a certain rookie pirate. He absorbed the information, grunted, and then started flipping through the newspaper. Perona had gotten him into crossword puzzles, which he had to admit made for a pleasant distraction while sailing alone. 5 letters, clue. Chaos. The meeting between the various commanders of the Revolutionary Army had been going surprisingly suspiciously even, smoothly despite the eccentric and powerful personalities of those assembled. They had made excellent progress finalizing a coherent strategy for their next steps in overturning the world government. Once the news about their illustrious leader's son had broken, however, now Monkey D. Dragon was struggling to maintain his stoic expression and intimidating arm-folded posture, while Emporio Ivankov repeatedly slapped him over the back of the head while screaming in his ear. I spent 20 years thinking you're a virgin and trying to set you up with some nice men and women and both at once, and then I find out you have a son. I was okay with that. Straw Boy is a nice person. The two of them had met during a hair-raising breakout from Impelled Down, which had been far too close for comfort. And I respected your silence about his mother, but then I find out it was with Big Mom. What is wrong with you? The revolutionary commanders were present in all their glory as well. Originally, Dragon had planned to have their meeting to address their plans for the reverie a few weeks later, particularly after they had successfully investigated Dressrosa. However, Sabo had's adopted brother, Fire Fist, Ace, who had advised that the Revolutionary Army leave that part of the New World alone. Given the rumors that Doflamingo had connections to Kaido, who Whitebeard would surely want retribution with, Dragon had deemed it prudent to stay out of ensuing conflict between pirate emperors. And then of course Luffy had dived headfirst into all of it. Morley, however, was lightly glaring at his boss with disapproval, which was highly out of character for the usually cheerful Okama. Of course, instinctive loathing for Big Mom was highly prominent throughout the various giant cultures, and his rank meant that Morley was better informed than most of her depravities. So yes, he was understandably put out with his boss over his dalliance. With Lindbergh and Karasu, the latter was busy trying to keep the cat Mink from modifying the coffee maker again. The Crow user did not believe that giving their subordinates access to drinks that would keep them awake for days at a time, and hyperactive, was productive except for emergencies. As for Bello Betty, she was openly amused by Ivankov's behavior, yet did not get involved herself. Despite her usual cutting and rude attitude, the eater of the pump fruit would regard this as Dragon's personal business, and thus not her concern. Besides, seeing the Okama monarch rant was too amusing on its own. You pass off on my candies and nice and respectable men and women for that. Frankly, Dragon did not see the big deal. All SX involved was a syringe and a little privacy after all. Man, and people like Ivankov call him inhibited, mentally. Dragon shook his head. What a bunch of prudes. Then he put his mind back on business. For instance, unlike the world at large, they were aware of the upcoming wedding. Still acting as if he was ignoring Ivankov, he turned to a subordinate, his gravely toned snapping the man out of his stupor. Where is Sabo? He sailed off just as we got the news, sir. Koala and Hack went with him to keep him out of trouble. Or at least try to. More importantly, Sabo had left without attacking Dragon for saying nothing about being Luffy's father. His precious, precious little brother. I see, Dragon commented, and then tried to think of other potential consequences. An increasingly infuriated Ivankov hit him even harder. -0 Shanks, did you see the newspaper yet? A very cheerful and drunk Shanks answered him. Huh, Benny, did you bring more sake? No, he didn't, thought Ben, the first mate of red-haired pirates as he eyed his drunk captain and the merry band, crew around him. Ben sighed and waved the newspaper in his hand in Shanks's face. Benny, no reading, we are celebrating, what are we celebrating? He asked confused. The crew around him laughed and hooted. Do we need reason to drink? Yasopp announced, snatching a bottle from one of the crew and gulping the drink down like water. The whole crew shouted, drummed and laughed their approval. It was about Luffy, Lucky Roo reminded them, waving the meat in his hand. Right, shouted Shanks merrily. Benny, our little baby boy grown up, beating up warlords left and right. Oh Captain, hiccup, you just wrote a song. Our captain is poet. Da ha 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 ha, I am genius. Bow to me. Your captain. Hiccup. Is. Hiccup. Jen. UIS. Da ha 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 ha. Shanks. Look, Luffy. Tried Ben again. Did he beat another warlord? Who is it this time? He already beat up Crocodile and Doflamingo. Maybe the Beauty Empress. The red-haired pirates and their agents had spent a lot of time and money confirming about Crocodile after Luffy got a sudden bounty increase at the same time. The nerve of the Navy, letting some third-rate Marine take the credit for Luffy. Maybe the leak guy. What his name? Shanks, Ben tried again. Who else? Fish guy. Nah. He stopped being a warlord. He helped Whitebeard in the war. Luffy was kidnapped. Who next? There are 7 warlords? Maybe Hawkeye. What did you say? Kidnapped? Who? How? What? Was that the Marines? Who dare? The whole drunk crew had just gotten a really ice-cold sobering shower and everyone was shouting over each other. The party mood just evaporated into something far more lethal. Silence, Shanks uttered. His voice merely a whisper, yet like whiplash carried to every ear. The power he was emitting was in direct contrast to the cheery drunk he was a few seconds ago. Now he was an emperor of pirates, brimming with wrath. He raised his hand and quietly Ben handed him the newspaper. Everyone was watching quietly, knowing better than to interrupt. Those who were too drunk to notice the grave mood were put to sleep by their helpful mates. Even though the announcement had sobered him, it still took Shanks a few minutes to be able to focus his blurry eyes on the words in front of him. Who did it? Asked Lucky Roo quietly after those few minutes, his hand missing its signature chunk of meat. He was worried. They were all worried. Ben eyed Shanks and was still undecided whether he should answer or not when Shanks spoke. Ready the ship to sail and contact our allies. No one moved. Shanks, asked Ben. Yasopp, aka the Godfather, got a hold of the newspaper. Shaking the drunkenness and staring at the paper, he finally blurted out. Big Mom is Luffy's mother? The whole crew began whispering in bewilderment and confusion. What? Huh? Are you that drunk that you can't read? Didn't Benny say kidnap? What that get to do with this? Give me the paper, you moron. No, you give it here. You are also drunk. Quite, bellowed Ben as he had a front row seat to the darkening of Shanks' face. We don't know if it is true, but according to the paper Luffy's biological mother is Big Mom and his father Dragon the Revolutionary, and according to our contact in the Navy, said individual thought he was feeding info to a wealthy businessman in return for plushy employment when they retired from active service. Which technically Shanks was. He was just kidnapped by persons unknown. Care to guess who the most likely suspect is? Could it be a trick, trying to get us to do something? The Marines trying to incite a war between the Whitebeard and Big Mom, or something. Big Mom is using Luffy's reputation, could be, Big Mom is devious. Yeah, I mean, she kidnapped him, right? Would Mother do that? This is Big Mom we are talking about. How many children does she have? 60, 70, she is like a machine, at least one every year for sure. A baby-making machine, that made Luffy, but his mother is still that gigantic woman. The kid's short. Are we sure it's true? I could believe it, I mean you remember how much he could eat. Yeah, probably because of his blood. Besides, most of her children are small compared to her. Lucky Roo stood up abruptly and bellowed. Luffy is Luffy. No matter who his parents are, he is our friend. The moron will always stay a moron, proclaimed Yasopp. But more importantly, he is our moron. Agreed the crew merrily, getting back into high spurts. We met him first, announced some drunken head. Shut up, you moron, she gave birth to him. I think that means she met him first, whispered another, shaking his head in dismay. Doesn't matter, he is our anchor. True. Ours. He has our captain's hat, Luffy, cheered the crew as one. What do you want us to do, Captain? Ben asked when the quiet returned. That's not like you, Benny. As I already said, ready the ship to sail and contact our allies. Ben opened his mouth unsure, but words didn't come out. Shanks turned, giving him his back. Don't worry, Benny, we are just going to visit. Just a friendly visit with Linlin. We haven't met in a while. And we should fix that. Especially now that we know we have a friend in common, Shanks announced cheerily. Everyone there if it weren't for the amount of hockey that he was producing. He was a one-armed, middle-aged man who looked and dressed like a beachcomber, except for the fact that the stone under his feet was starting to crack under the pressure of his sheer presence. Don't worry, Benny, Shanks added with a smile that actually reached his eyes. Benny was very, extremely, awfully, enormously, not worried. Really? Feeling frankly bored, Charlotte Katakuri blocked his little brother's latest kick, and threw him down on the deck. Enough, he flatly ordered. Snarling even as he struggled against the sea prism stone shackles, Monkey D. Luffy tried to kill his capturer with his eyes. Why are you taking us prisoner, he demanded. I already told you, scoffed Katakuri. Easy, Captain, Sanji softly said as he came up beside Luffy. As much as the chef wanted to attack as well, he dared not. Luffy had basically been in a coma for the last few days, and was still on the mend given the grievous wounds he had suffered. Moreover, with Luffy's hands cuffed behind his back, powers drained away, and on a ship at sea, their straits would have been perilous enough without facing someone who introduced himself as Big Mom's top fighter. Crossing his arms across his chest, Katakuri was silent, leaving it to a still shell-shocked Sanji to repeat what Luffy had ignored when blindly attacking the instant he regained consciousness. According to him, Charlotte Katakuri, Big Mom's top general, your dad, slept with Big Mom. Huh? He says your mom is Big Mom. Sanji explained. The one you challenged on Fishman Island. Luffy narrowed his eyes, yet he said nothing. I was there when you were born, Katakuri proclaimed. And when Dragon stole you away. And yes, we're sure. I did a maternity test while you slept, with a sample of your blood. Oh good, Luffy calmly noted. I'd hate for everything to happen because of a big misunderstanding because Dragon married another woman who's my mom, and the guy you really want is someone else. Katakuri looked at Sanji with a cocked eyebrow, silently asking, that's his only reaction? Despite himself, Blackfoot only snorted in resignation. He mouthed out, just like learning about his dad. Looking back at his little brother, Katakuri was still put off, but had to appreciate it was less emotional than it could have been. Denials, trying to ingratiate himself to his newfound family, arrogance, etc. The newfound young Charlotte was a strong pirate, but was also still kind of a baby, especially with his face. Katakuri had been readying himself to deal with childish tantrums thrown one after the other, especially from what little he and Tamago were able to find out in what short time they had. About his mysterious new brother. He got the impression that Luffy was impulsive, headstrong and immature. Right now, he was feeling disappointed, yet there was an ominous feeling that he wasn't sure of its source, despite his powers of foresight, and was unable to shake it off. Right, Katakuri allowed. Regardless, you're being brought back to your family. In chains? Sanji gritted out, old memories struggling back to the surface. And why am I here? Those are related. Charlotte D. Luffy still transgressed against Mama, and this is her showing her displeasure. As part of that, you will not be coming back with me, although she is very proud to see how you've grown away from the family. And she has a great honor she plans to grant you as well. With his foresight though, which they seemed ignorant of, which was beneficial, he saw that letting them ask about that would lead to a lot of confused and angry shouting, so he looked at Blackfoot and spoke before they could. As for you, Vinsmoke Sanji. Luffy's neck cracked as his head shot around to stare at his friend. Ever since learning about the nature of his skills with observation haki, he worked to maintain his ability to sense emotions 24/7. And now those senses were screaming at him. Sanji was a cauldron of hate, rage, and fear. Helplessness. From Sanji. The man who would face down an army with only a dry remark and a cigarette. Clearly he had to find out who dared to cause that in his nakama, and beat them until they knew better to even think of doing that, including crushing their dreams in the process. First though, he had to handle this weirdo with the scarf. Of course, the man was graciously doing all he could to make himself an acceptable target of opportunity, and seemed to be neck deep in all this anyways. He was a strong opponent, but that never stopped Luffy before. If anything, it made it all the more important to take him down. No, the chef whispered. Yes, Katakuri continued piteously. A marriage of alliance between our families. You, Vinsmoke Sanji, are to marry my little sister, Pudding. To illustrate, he pulled out a picture of Pudding, with one of her best, I'm so sweet and innocent, faces. Sanji promptly started panting with his tongue out, hearts pounding in his eyes. She will enjoy killing this one, Katakuri knew. In fact, Pudding may even wish to make him suffer. Yet then he discreetly glanced at Luffy. Although, that might be a waste. He will have to make sure that their new brother doesn't come in the way of any of their plans. It was clear his little brother cared for the cook, and while having such bonds killed would leave him with only the Charlotte family, it might also mean they would have to put the boy down. Which would be a shame given the power he had demonstrated against Doflamingo, especially given that he was still just a greenhorn. And Blackfoot did well too. Despite his small bounty, even if I was holding back so much, no complete weakling would take me 2 attempts before I knocked him out, even when he was already injured and exhausted. It might even ease the transition of power as we take the Germa's scientific prowess for ourselves, by having the sole surviving member of the royal family helping us. After all, his is personally incomprehensible as it was for Katakuri, even if he knew other families were different. Reaction is that he despises the rest of his kin. Definitely something to bring up with Mama. Now Katakuri held up another picture. And you will cooperate, or this man dies. Sanji paled at the sight of Zeph, his mentor, while Luffy ground his teeth so hard Katakuri was a little worried they might shatter. After all, getting treatment for even a single broken tooth was rather difficult for the Big Mom pirates. Toto Land was not known for its dentists. In fact, they were the equivalent of the nation's black market, giving illegal operations to treat people's teeth for a hefty fee. Some nonsense about cavities or whatever. Glancing towards the front of the ship, Katakuri could see the outline of an approaching massive snail. One of the components of the Germa kingdom. While theoretically he could take on that entire society by himself, Vinsmoke Judge was not that much of a fool, and there was no guarantee that the scientific knowledge would survive the conquest. Best to maintain the plan. Indeed, they hardly needed to do a double wedding. Granted, the idea they were worth 2 marriages would flatter the Germa into letting down their guard down more, except one was already sufficient. No, Mama's true motive was to have an excuse to broadcast to the world at large about his little brother's status. The additional threat of the boy's already powerful bloodline, then mixed with that of the army of evil, would only add to the ensuing panic. Alas, the bride-to-be would be dead before she could give birth to a new Charlotte. So you're taking us to see Sanji's family? Guessed Luffy. Correct. And you're to be their guest as well, to cool your heels before seeing Mama. Luffy stared at him with a blank face and narrowed eyes, humming all the while. His newest brother had a remarkable poker face, mused Katakuri to himself. Then he informed them in a tone of voice that accepted no arguments, for no guests of the Germa 66.